Sometimes life's greatest lessons come not from the pain we endure, but from the strength we find within ourselves to rise above it. When a respected farmer faced public humiliation at a tractor dealership, no one expected the profound truth that would leave an entire community in tears. Nestled between rolling hills and endless wheat fields, Pine Valley emerged at sunrise like a painting brought to life. Morning dew sparkled on wildflowers that dotted the countryside, while distant mountains stood guard over the farming community that had thrived here for generations. Among the scattered farmhouses and weathered barns lived Marcus Thompson, a third-generation farmer whose calloused hands and sun-weathered face told stories of 30 years working the land. Marcus's 20 acres of organic vegetables stood out like an emerald patch among the vast industrial farms that surrounded his property. While his neighbors commanded fleets of modern machinery, Marcus still worked his land the old way, with hand tools, determination, and an unwavering faith that honest work would eventually lead to better days. His small farmhouse, though, modest with its faded blue paint and creaking porch steps, radiated warmth and life through every window. Inside, his wife Sarah maintained order in their busy household, her keen mind for numbers helping them stretch every dollar. Their 3 teenage children, Michael, Emma, and young David, had grown up learning the value of hard work alongside their father. Each morning before school, they helped tend to the vegetables, their hands dirty, but their hearts full of pride in their family's legacy. The Thompson family was known throughout Pine Valley not just for their exceptional organic produce, but for their generosity. Even in lean times, Marcus never turned away a neighbor in need, whether sharing their harvest during tough seasons or lending a helping hand during planting time. The Thompsons embodied the spirit of community that was becoming increasingly rare in modern farming. Life in Pine Valley had changed dramatically over the past decade. Most family farms had been bought out by large agricultural corporations, their quaint farmhouses replaced by automated systems and GPS-guided equipment. But Marcus held firm to his beliefs, teaching his children that quality couldn't be rushed and that some things were worth doing the harder way. Every Saturday, the Thompsons would set up their stand at the local farmers' market, their table always drawing the longest lines. Regular customers swore they could taste the difference in their vegetables, the extra care, the natural methods, the patience that went into every crop. Thompson organic produce had become synonymous with quality in Pine Valley and the surrounding counties, but success came at a price. Each season grew more challenging as Marcus struggled to keep up with demand using only manual labor and his trusty old pickup truck. The work was taking its toll. His back ached more each evening, and the hours grew longer as he tried to maintain production. Sarah noticed how he winced when lifting heavy crates, though he always brushed off her concerns with a gentle smile. The children saw it too. 15-year-old Michael, the eldest, often stayed up late helping his father plan the next day's work. Emma, 13, worried when she saw her father massaging his shoulders after long days in the fields. Even 11-year-old David, usually lost in his own world of books and dreams, began asking why they couldn't have machines like the other farms. Marcus had always been proud of doing things the traditional way, but reality was catching up. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, he sat at their worn kitchen table, studying invoices by lamplight. Sarah placed a cup of tea beside him and settled into the chair across from his. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice carrying years of shared struggles and triumphs, "maybe it's time we considered making a change. The children and I see how hard this is becoming." Marcus looked up, his eyes reflecting both weariness and determination. "The organic methods are working, Sarah. Our customers trust us because they know exactly how we grow their food." "I'm not suggesting we change our methods," she replied, reaching across to take his weathered hand in hers. "But there are ways to maintain quality while making the work easier, Modern equipment doesn't mean giving up our values. Their conversation was interrupted by Michael, who had been standing in the doorway. Dad, I've been researching organic farming equipment, he said, approaching with his tablet. There are tractors specially designed for small-scale organic farms. They could help us maintain our methods while increasing production. Marcus listened as his son explained the possibilities, something stirring in his heart. He'd always believed in teaching his children to value tradition, but perhaps they were now teaching him something about adapting while staying true to one's principles. That night, lying awake in bed, Marcus thought about his father and grandfather who had worked this same land. They had always taught him that a farmer's worth was measured not by his tools, but by his character. Yet they had also been innovators in their time, willing to embrace changes that served their values rather than compromise them. As dawn broke, over Pine Valley the next morning, Marcus stood at the edge of his fields, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. His father's words echoed in his mind. "The land doesn't care what tools you use, son. It cares about the respect you show it." Perhaps it was time to show respect, not just to the land, but to himself and his family's future as well. Little did Marcus know that his decision to finally modernize his farm would lead to an encounter that would test not just his dignity, but the very values he'd spent a lifetime cultivating. The lessons that awaited him at the tractor dealership would reach far beyond the simple purchase of a machine, touching hearts and changing lives in ways no one could have predicted. Marcus's decision to modernize his farm wasn't made lightly. One Sunday afternoon, while the family gathered for their weekly dinner, the conversation turned serious as Emma helped her father bandage another blister on his hand. "Dad, I've been doing calculations," Michael announced, spreading papers across the dinner table after the plates were cleared. "With a proper tractor, we could triple our production while actually reducing the strain on the soil. The model I researched has special tires designed for organic farming. They minimize soil compaction." Sarah noticed how Marcus's eyes lingered on the figures their son had meticulously prepared. She knew her husband well enough to see the internal struggle playing out behind his thoughtful expression. The pride of traditional farming methods warred with the practical needs of their growing business. "The Carson family's youngest boy got accepted to college last week," Sarah added quietly, watching her husband's reaction. "They said their tractor investment 5 years ago made it possible to save for his education." She didn't need to elaborate. Their own children's future education was a constant concern. David, usually buried in his books, spoke up unexpectedly. "My science teacher says sustainable farming isn't about refusing technology, Dad. It's about using it wisely to protect the land for future generations." That evening, Marcus walked his fields alone, something he often did when big decisions weighed on his mind. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues, reminding him of his father's words about change being as natural as the seasons. He stopped at the eastern boundary, where his organic vegetables met the neighbors' conventional crops. The contrast was stark. Their perfectly uniform rows achieved through modern equipment, his slightly irregular but vibrant plots maintained by hand. Back home, Marcus spent hours researching organic farming equipment. He discovered stories of small-scale farmers who had successfully integrated modern machinery while maintaining their commitment to organic principles. The initial investment was substantial, $175,000 for the specialized tractor he needed, but the potential return could secure his family's future. The decision to buy a tractor became more than just about equipment. It became about legacy. Marcus realized that adapting didn't mean abandoning his values. It meant finding new ways to honor them. He began setting aside money, starting with the modest earnings from their farmers' market sales. The family embraced the goal wholeheartedly, Sarah started selling her homemade preserves, adding the profits to their tractor fund. Michael took on extra work at neighboring farms, while Emma began making organic herb sachets to sell at the market. Even David contributed by tutoring younger students in math, proudly adding his earnings to the family's savings. They made sacrifices together. Family vacations were postponed, clothes were mended instead of replaced, and entertainment became centered around free community events. But there was joy in their shared purpose, a sense of unity that grew stronger with each dollar saved. Word of the Thompsons' goal spread through Pine Valley. Their regular customers at the farmers' market began requesting extra produce to support their effort. Some even offered to prepay for future harvests, touched by the family's determination. Old Mr. Jenkins, who'd farmed alongside Marcus's father decades ago, stopped by one evening. "Your father would be proud," he said, sitting on the porch steps. "He always said a farmer must grow with his farm. Times change, but principles don't have to." The transition wouldn't be simple. Beyond the financial challenge, Marcus knew they'd need to adapt their entire farming approach. He spent winter evenings studying organic tractor techniques, learning how to integrate mechanical assistance while preserving the soil's delicate balance. The children became involved in the planning. Michael researched fuel efficiency and maintenance costs. Emma designed new field layouts that would accommodate tractor paths while maximizing growing space. David, with his love of mathematics, calculated optimal timing for crop rotations using mechanical assistance. As their savings grew, so did their hopes. They began visiting equipment dealerships on weekends, not to buy yet, but to learn. Most salespeople were dismissive upon learning they weren't ready to purchase, but Marcus used these experiences to teach his children about patience and dignity. "Remember," he told them after one particularly condescending salesman had ignored them, "how people treat you when they think you can't benefit them shows you who they really are." The family's goal transformed their community's perception of organic farming. Other small-scale farmers began reconsidering their resistance to modernization, inspired by how the Thompsons planned to integrate technology while maintaining their organic principles. 18 months into their saving journey, an unexpected frost damaged several farms in the region. While many neighbors lost significant portions of their crops, the Thompsons' careful organic methods had made their plants more resilient. The increased income from that season accelerated their progress toward their goal. As their tractor fund neared its target, Marcus focused on finding the right equipment dealer. He wanted someone who understood organic farming's unique requirements, who would see him as a serious farmer rather than just another sale. The search led him to Capital City Equipment, 3 hours away, where they specialized in eco-friendly agricultural machinery. The morning they finally had enough saved, Marcus woke before dawn. Sarah had pressed his best shirt, not new, but clean and dignified. As he prepared to leave for Capital City, his family gathered in the pre-dawn darkness. Each hugged him, their dreams and sacrifices wrapped into this moment. "Remember, Dad," Michael said, "you're not just buying a tractor, you're buying our future." Little did Marcus know that this day, which should have been a triumph of family unity and perseverance, would become a test of character that would ripple through multiple lives and communities. The lessons waiting at Capital City Equipment would extend far beyond the purchase of farm machinery, touching on deeper truths about dignity, prejudice, and the power of maintaining one's principles in the face of humiliation. The 18 months that followed Marcus's decision transformed the Thompson family in ways they never expected. Their commitment to saving for the tractor became a masterclass in sacrifice, unity, and innovative thinking that would later prove even more valuable than the machine itself. Sarah took charge of their financial planning, creating detailed spreadsheets, tracking every penny. Their dining room table became command central each evening, with the family gathering to record daily expenses and earnings. She discovered creative ways to reduce costs, teaching herself to make household cleaners from natural ingredients, starting a small herb garden outside the kitchen window, and organizing clothing swaps with other farming families. The children's dedication surprised even Marcus. Michael, already skilled at farm work, began offering his services to neighboring farms during weekends. He became known for his reliability, often working extra hours without complaint. The money he earned went straight into the tractor fund, though Marcus insisted he keep a small portion for himself. "A man's work deserves fair compensation," he'd say, teaching his son about self-respect alongside sacrifice. Emma revealed an entrepreneurial spirit that amazed her parents. She started making organic beauty products, using their farm's lavender and calendula, selling them at the farmer's market alongside their vegetables. Her small business grew steadily, with regular customers placing special orders. She kept meticulous records, proudly announcing her weekly contributions to the family goal. Even young David, despite his natural inclination toward books rather than business, found ways to contribute. He began tutoring younger students in mathematics and science, charging modest fees that added to their savings. More importantly, he applied his analytical mind to researching tractor specifications and maintenance requirements, creating detailed reports that would prove invaluable during their eventual purchase. The sacrifices were substantial. The family's old television finally broke, but instead of replacing it, they spent evenings playing board games or reading together. When Emma's friends got new phones, she kept her old one without complaint. Michael postponed getting his driver's license, knowing the insurance costs would drain their savings. These weren't just financial decisions. They were investments in their shared dream. Their farm work continued through all seasons, but now with renewed purpose. Marcus found himself working alongside his children with greater patience, using every task as an opportunity to teach them about organic farming principles. These lessons would ensure that when they finally got their tractor, it would complement rather than compromise their farming philosophy. The local community began noticing the Thompsons' dedication. Their regular customers at the farmers' market, hearing about their goal, often rounded up their purchases, insisting the extra money go toward the tractor fund. Old farming families, who had initially been skeptical of Marcus's organic methods, started showing respect for his family's determination. Mrs. Peterson, their elderly neighbor who had lived in Pine Valley all her life, brought over a mason jar one evening. Inside was nearly $200 in coins she'd been saving. "Your father helped my late husband during the drought of '82, she told Marcus. "Said nothing about it, just showed up with water tanks when we needed them most. This seems a fitting way to return that kindness." The family faced setbacks too. A late frost damaged part of their crop, threatening their savings plan. Instead of despairing, they turned it into an opportunity. Sarah organized a community workshop on cold weather farming techniques, charging a small fee that helped recoup some of their losses. The experience taught them that challenges could become opportunities with the right mindset. Their determination affected others in unexpected ways. The Harrison family, who ran the conventional farm next door, began asking questions about organic methods after seeing how the Thompsons' crops survived weather extremes better than their chemically treated fields. Marcus always shared his knowledge freely, believing that good farming practices should be common knowledge, not competitive secrets. Winter evenings became learning sessions. The family gathered around their wood stove, studying farming journals and equipment catalogs. They learned about soil compression, fuel efficiency, and maintenance schedules. Marcus insisted they understand not just how to operate a tractor, but how to care for it properly. "Any fool can buy a machine," he'd say, "but it takes wisdom to make it last." Their vegetable stand at the farmer's market evolved into a symbol of their journey. Sarah added a small thermometer-style chart showing their progress toward their goal. Regular customers began checking it weekly, celebrating each small advance. Children would drop their spare change into a mason jar labeled Thompson Tractor. When learning about community support through example, the hardest moments came during harvest seasons. While other farms used mechanical harvesters, the Thompsons continued their manual methods. Marcus's back ached more with each passing month, but he never complained. Instead, he focused on teaching his children efficient hand-harvesting techniques. Knowing these skills would remain valuable even after they got their tractor, their sacrifice attracted media attention when a local newspaper reporter visited the farmer's market. The resulting article, titled "Family's United Dream Grows More Than Vegetables," brought visitors from neighboring counties to their market stand. Some came just to contribute to their fund, moved by their story of determination. As their savings grew, so did their knowledge. The family spent Sundays visiting various equipment dealerships, learning about different tractor models and their capabilities. Many salespeople dismissed them upon learning they weren't ready to buy, but Marcus turned each rejection into a lesson for his children about maintaining dignity in the face of prejudice. The experience was transforming them all. Michael developed a quiet confidence. Emma discovered her business acumen, and David's technical knowledge flourished. Sarah watched her family grow stronger through their shared purpose, while Marcus learned that adapting to change didn't mean abandoning tradition. Finally, after countless hours of extra work, careful saving, and community support, they reached their goal. The morning they counted out their savings for the final time, the entire family gathered around the kitchen table. The money represented more than just funds for a tractor. It was a testament to their unity, perseverance, and faith in each other. What they didn't know was that their greatest test still lay ahead. The lessons they'd learned about dignity, determination, and family unity would prove crucial in the unexpected challenges awaiting them at the dealership. Their journey had prepared them not just to buy a tractor, but to stand strong in the face of prejudice and emerge with their principles intact. The morning of their planned trip to Capital City Equipment dawned crisp and clear. Marcus rose before sunrise, a lifetime habit that today carried extra significance. Standing in front of the mirror, he carefully buttoned his best shirt, faded but meticulously pressed by Sarah the night before. His weathered hands, testament to decades of honest work, trembled slightly as he counted out the money they'd saved. The kitchen was already alive with activity. Sarah had prepared a hearty breakfast, knowing the 3-hour drive ahead would be taxing. The children, despite it being a school day, had gotten special permission to be late. They wanted to see their father off on this momentous journey. "The money's all here," Sarah confirmed, double-checking their calculations one final time. They had slightly exceeded their goal, accounting for potential taxes and fees. The cash was carefully arranged in an old leather portfolio that had belonged to Marcus's father, a fitting touch of heritage for this step into their future. Michael presented his father with a folder containing all their research. "I've highlighted the specifications for the organic farming models, Dad. Remember, the PX5000 series has the specialized tires we discussed, and the hydraulic system is adjustable for different soil conditions." Emma had polished Marcus's old work boots until they gleamed. "They may not be fancy," she said, "but they tell our story." David contributed a hand-drawn map marking the most efficient route to Capital City, complete with estimated fuel stops and timing calculations. The family gathered around their worn kitchen table for a final review of their plan. Marcus spread out Michael's research materials, going through each detail methodically. The tractor they'd selected wasn't just any model. It was specifically designed for small-scale organic farming, with features that would preserve soil integrity while increasing efficiency. "Remember what Mr. Jenkins said," Sarah reminded him, referring to their elderly neighbor's advice about dealerships. "Don't let them upsell you on features we don't need. We've done our research. We know exactly what works for our farm." The portfolio with their savings was checked multiple times. They'd arranged the money in neat bundles, each labeled with post-it notes in Sarah's precise handwriting. The total amount, $175,000, represented countless hours of labor, community support, and family sacrifice. Marcus walked his fields one last time before departing, a morning ritual that today felt particularly significant. The sun was just beginning to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, and dew sparkled on the organic vegetables they'd nurtured by hand for so many years. Back at the house, the family shared a moment of prayer, not their usual practice, but today felt different. They stood in a circle, hands joined, each offering their hopes for the journey ahead. Even David, usually shy about such displays, spoke about his dreams for their farm's future. As Marcus prepared to leave, Sarah handed him a packed lunch she'd prepared. "No need to waste money on restaurant food," she said practically, though they both knew it was her way of keeping him connected to home during his journey. The old pickup truck had been thoroughly cleaned and checked by Michael the day before. The gas tank was full, tires properly inflated, and emergency kit updated. Every detail had been considered, every possibility planned for. The children each hugged their father goodbye. Michael's embrace was firm, man to man. Emma's eyes glistened with proud tears. David, usually reserved, surprised everyone by running back for a second hug. "Remember," Sarah said softly as she embraced her husband, "you're carrying more than money with you today. You're carrying our dreams, our hard work, our future. Stand tall." Marcus climbed into his truck, the leather portfolio secure beside him. As he started the engine, he saw his family framed in the morning light, Sarah with her arm around Emma, Michael standing tall and proud, David waving enthusiastically. The image would stay with him throughout the day ahead. The drive to Capital City gave Marcus time to reflect. Each mile marker brought him closer to a fundamental change in their farming operation. He thought about his father, wondering what he would think of this modernization. The old man had always said that farming was about adapting while keeping your principles intact. He made one stop along the way at a small diner where traveling farmers often gathered. The conversation there strengthened his resolve. Other farmers shared stories of their own equipment purchases, offering advice about dealership negotiations and warning him about common pitfalls. As the city skyline appeared on the horizon, Marcus rehearsed the specifications he'd memorized. He knew every detail of the tractor they needed, every feature that would help maintain their organic farming standards. This knowledge would prove essential in the hours ahead. The morning's preparation had filled him with quiet confidence. He was no longer just a farmer with savings. He was a businessman, making a significant investment in his family's future. The dignity and pride instilled by his family's support straightened his shoulders and lifted his chin. What Marcus couldn't know as he approached Capital City Equipment was that all this preparation, the research, the planning, the family's support, would serve a purpose far beyond the simple purchase of a tractor. The lessons in dignity and self-worth his family had reinforced that morning would be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated. The carefully pressed shirt, the polished boots, the organized portfolio. These weren't just preparations for a purchase. They were armor for a battle of principles that would challenge everything the Thompsons stood for, leading to a moment that would touch hearts and change lives far beyond their small farming community. Capital City Equipment loomed before Marcus, its glass and steel structure a stark contrast to his familiar farmland. The massive showroom gleamed under the late morning sun, modern tractors displayed like jewels behind spotless windows. The parking lot was filled with luxury vehicles, making his weathered pickup truck stand out conspicuously. Adjusting his collar and gripping the leather portfolio, Marcus stepped into a world that felt alien to his sensibilities. The air conditioning hit him first, a sharp change from the natural warmth he was accustomed to. The showroom's polished floors reflected overhead lights so bright they made him squint after his long drive. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with an energy different from his quiet fields. Salespeople in crisp suits moved between the machinery, their shoes clicking against the tile. The tractors on display were arranged like art pieces, their paint jobs pristine and unmarked by honest work. Marcus approached the reception desk, where a young woman with perfectly manicured nails barely glanced up from her computer. "Welcome to Capital City Equipment. Do you have an appointment?" Her tone suggested she'd already judged him based on his appearance. "No appointment," Marcus replied, maintaining his dignity. "I'm here to purchase a tractor, specifically the PX 5000 series." He noticed how her eyebrows raised slightly at his direct statement of purpose. Before she could respond, a sales associate approached. Blake Matthews, as his nameplate identified him, was young, probably fresh out of college. His suit looked expensive, and his smile carried the artificial warmth of someone trained in high-pressure sales. "I couldn't help but overhear," Blake said, his voice carrying a hint of condescension. "The PX 5000? That's one of our premium models. Perhaps we should look at something more appropriate for your needs." Marcus felt the first sting of prejudice, but remembered his family's morning encouragement. "I know exactly what I need," he stated firmly. "I've done extensive research on organic farming equipment." Blake's smile tightened. Of course. But you understand, the PX 5000 is a sophisticated piece of machinery. It requires significant investment and expertise to operate." His eyes flicked to Marcus's worn boots and calloused hands. Other customers in the showroom began to take notice of the exchange. A couple in expensive clothing whispered to each other, glancing in Marcus's direction. A salesperson, showing a tractor to another customer, paused their presentation to watch. "I'm well aware of the investment required," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "I'd appreciate being shown the model I asked for." Blake's demeanor shifted from condescension to barely concealed irritation. "Sir, perhaps we should discuss your budget first. The PX 5000 starts at $175,000 for the base model with the organic farming package," Marcus interrupted, demonstrating his knowledge, "plus applicable taxes and fees." The exchange was drawing more attention now. Another salesperson, older and more seasoned, began moving in their direction, likely sensing potential trouble. The receptionist had stopped pretending to work and was openly watching the scene unfold. Blake's face flushed slightly. "Sir, this is a prestigious dealership. We deal with serious agricultural investors. I'm trying to save you time by suggesting more realistic options." Marcus stood straighter, feeling the weight of his family's dreams in the portfolio he carried. "I am a serious investor. I'm an organic farmer with 20 acres of sustainable production. I've spent 18 months saving and researching to make this purchase." The older salesperson had reached them now. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his tone carrying authority. His name tag identified him as Richard Wells, sales manager. Before Marcus could respond, Blake spoke quickly. "This gentleman is interested in the PX 5000, Mr. Wells. I was just explaining our financing options and qualification requirements." "I don't need financing," Marcus stated firmly. "I'm here to make a cash purchase." The statement hung in the air, drawing more whispers from onlookers. Richard Wells studied Marcus more carefully now, but his expression remained skeptical. What happened next would become the catalyst for everything that followed. "Blake, perhaps feeling embarrassed by his earlier assumptions or frustrated by Marcus's quiet confidence, made a fatal error in judgment. He reached out and placed his hand on Marcus's shoulder, attempting to guide him toward the cheaper models. "Listen, friend," Blake said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Let me show you something more in line with your situation." The touch was unwelcome, and Marcus stepped back. "Please don't put your hands on me. I came here to make a legitimate purchase, and I expect to be treated with respect." Blake's face darkened. In a moment of complete unprofessionalism, he did something that would change not just careers, but lives. As Marcus turned to address Mr. Wells, Blake's hand shot out again, this time not to guide, but to grab. The sudden motion caused Marcus to stumble, and in the ensuing moment of chaos, Blake's hand connected with Marcus's face in what appeared to be a slap. The showroom fell silent. The sound of the impact seemed to echo off the polished surfaces. Customers froze in place, employees stood shocked, and time itself seemed to pause in disbelief at what had just transpired. Marcus stood perfectly still, his cheek reddening not just from the slap, but from the humiliation. The leather portfolio remained clutched in his hands, containing proof of his worth that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. The tension in the room was palpable. Security cameras had captured everything. Phones had recorded the incident. And in that frozen moment, no one yet knew that this act of prejudice and violence would unveil a truth so powerful it would bring an entire community to tears. The slap's echo still hung in the air as the showroom remained frozen in shock. Richard Wells, the sales manager, was the first to break the silence. "Blake, my office now!" His voice carried the sharp edge of barely contained fury, but Blake, perhaps realizing the gravity of his action, made another crucial mistake. Instead of complying, he attempted to justify himself. "Mr. Wells, he was being difficult. These people ain't come in here wasting our time, pretending they can afford—" Marcus raised his hand, silencing Blake mid-sentence. With deliberate calmness, he opened the leather portfolio and withdrew the neatly bundled cash. "These people," he said quietly, his dignity intact despite the red mark on his cheek. "Let me show you what these people can afford." The assembled crowd watched in stunned silence as Marcus began placing bundle after bundle of carefully counted cash on the nearest display table. Each stack landed with a soft thud that seemed to punctuate the magnitude of Blake's error. $175,000, Marcus announced, his voice carrying across the silent showroom. "Earned through honest work, saved over 18 months by my entire family. My children gave up their allowances. My wife sold preserves at farmers' markets. My neighbors contributed because they believed in us." Blake's face had lost all color. Other salespeople shifted uncomfortably, perhaps recognizing their own prejudices in his actions. The customers who had been whispering earlier now looked ashamed. "But this money," Marcus continued, gesturing to the stacks, "isn't just about buying a tractor. It's about dignity. It's about respect. It's about judging a person's worth by their character, not their appearance. Security had arrived, but they stood uncertain, reading the room's dynamics. Richard Wells waved them back, recognizing that something more important than a simple altercation was unfolding. Marcus turned to address the entire showroom. "I'm a third-generation farmer. My grandfather taught me that the soil doesn't care what clothes you wear or what car you drive. It responds to respect, dedication, and hard work." He touched his cheek where Blake had slapped him. "This mark will fade, but the lesson here should last. You see a man in worn boots and assume he can't afford your machines. You see calloused hands and think they're not worthy of your respect. But these hands have fed families, supported community, and preserved land for future generations." A woman in expensive clothing was openly crying now. An elderly man in a business suit nodded slowly, perhaps remembering his own humble beginnings. Even the receptionist, who had initially dismissed Marcus, looked down at her manicured nails in shame. Blake attempted one final defense. "Mr. Wells, you can't let him talk to us this way. We have standards." "Standards?" Marcus's voice remained calm, but carried throughout the showroom. "Let me tell you about standards. Every Saturday I stand at a farmer's market selling organic vegetables. I treat every customer with respect, whether they're buying a single tomato or a week's worth of produce. That's standards." He began, carefully returning the money to his portfolio. "My children watch me save for this tractor. They learned about sacrifice, dedication, and dignity. Today they learned something else, that sometimes the hardest soil to cultivate is the prejudice in people's hearts." Richard Wells stepped forward, his face a mask of professional anguish. "Mr. Thompson, please accept our deepest apologies. This behavior is completely unacceptable. Blake, you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out." But Marcus wasn't finished. As Blake was led away, he spoke again. "You know what the saddest part is? I'm not the first person you've judged this way. I'm just the first one who had the means to prove you wrong. How many others have walked through those doors, carrying dreams you dismissed because of how they looked?" The question hung heavy in the air. Several salespeople looked away, perhaps recalling similar incidents. A young farmer in the crowd, dressed similarly to Marcus, wiped tears from his eyes. "The money's still here," Marcus said, patting the portfolio. "The question is whether your dealership has learned something today that's worth more than this cash." Richard Wells straightened, his tie visibly moved. "Mr. Thompson, if you'll allow me, I'd like to personally handle your purchase. But more than that, I'd like to hear your story. I think we all need to hear it." The tension in the room began to shift to something else, a shared recognition of a profound truth being revealed. The prejudice that had led to violence was transforming into a moment of collective enlightenment. What happened next would not only change Capital City Equipment's policies forever, but would ripple through the agricultural community, touching hearts and transforming minds in ways that would bring even the most hardened cynics to tears. Richard Wells guided Marcus away from the stunned showroom crowd, leading him through a corridor lined with agricultural awards and vintage farming photographs. The sales manager's private office offered a stark contrast to the showroom's modern sterility. Dark wood paneling and worn leather furniture spoke of tradition, while family photos and a well-used Bible on the desk hinted at values perhaps forgotten. In the day-to-day corporate environment, "Please sit," Richard gestured to a comfortable leather chair that had clearly hosted many important conversations. Marcus settled in, still clutching his father's portfolio tightly, the red mark on his cheek beginning to fade, but the dignity in his posture unchanged. The portfolio rested on his lap like a shield, containing not just money, but the physical proof of his family's dreams and sacrifices. Richard sat behind his desk, but instead of maintaining the usual professional distance, he rolled his chair around to sit directly across from Marcus. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes about the conversation to come. "Before we discuss any business, Mr. Thompson, I need to tell you something." Reaching across his desk, Richard picked up a worn silver frame, studying it for a moment before turning it toward Marcus. The photograph inside showed a much younger Richard Wells, barely in his 20s, standing beside a rusted tractor in patched overalls. His hands were calloused, his face sun-weathered, his eyes carrying the same determination Marcus saw in his own mirror every morning. 30 years ago, that was me," Richard began, his voice carrying an emotion that seemed long buried. "My father was a sharecropper in Western County. We worked other people's land, lived in other people's houses, and dealt with other people's Judgment every single day. I know exactly what it feels like to walk into a place like this and be measured by your clothes instead of your character. The revelation hung in the air between them as Richard continued, his professional veneer cracking. With each word, when I started here as a junior salesman, I made myself a promise. I swore I'd never let anyone feel the way I felt walking into dealerships with my father. Somewhere along the way, climbing the corporate ladder, I failed. I let this place become exactly what I once hated. Marcus watched as Richard's eyes grew moist. The sales manager picked up his Bible, running his fingers over its worn cover. That money you showed everyone out there, it's not just cash, is it? It's dignity. It's dreams. It's family. It's everything I used to understand, but somehow forgot. Standing abruptly, Richard walked to his office door with newfound purpose. "Janet," he called to his assistant, his voice carrying down the hallway, "get everyone in the showroom. Everyone. Sales staff, maintenance, customers if they'll stay, and get corporate on the video call. They need to hear this." The next 15 minutes saw Richard's office transform. Staff members squeezed in, standing shoulder to shoulder. Customers who had witnessed the incident chose to stay, sensing they were about to witness something important. A large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing serious-faced corporate executives joining remotely. Richard stood beside Marcus, who remained seated, still holding his father's portfolio. The sales manager surveyed the room, making eye contact with each person before speaking. "Today, we witnessed something shameful in our showroom, but we also witnessed something profound. Mr. Thompson here taught us a lesson worth more than any commission, any sale, any quarterly bonus. With your permission, sir," he turned to Marcus, "would you share your story with us? The whole story?" Marcus stood slowly, his grip on the portfolio loosening slightly as he faced the crowd. For the next 30 minutes, he spoke about the 18 months of saving, describing his children's sacrifices, his wife's dedication, and their community's support. As he detailed his family's journey, tears appeared in listeners' eyes. Even the corporate executives on screen leaned forward, captivated. "The money itself isn't what matters," Marcus explained, opening the portfolio to reveal the carefully bundled savings. "It's what it represents. Every dollar here has a story. This bundle, from my son Michael working weekends at neighboring farms. These bills, from my daughter Emma's organic beauty products. Even my youngest David contributed with his tutoring. Money." A young salesman in the back raised his hand, his voice shaking. "Sir, last week I turned away a farmer because he came in wearing muddy boots. I never even asked what he wanted to buy." His confession opened a floodgate, with others beginning to nod, similar stories written on their faces. The corporate executives on screen whispered among themselves before their spokesperson unmuted. "Mr. Wells, in light of today's events, you have full authority to implement any changes you deem necessary. The company will back you completely." Richard straightened his tie, years of corporate training battling with his rediscovered conscience. "Starting today, everything changes. New training programs, new policies, but more than that, new hearts." He turned to Marcus. "Your purchase today won't cost you $175,000. The dealership will absorb 20% of the cost as a small step toward making this right." But Marcus shook his head, his farmer's wisdom shining through. "No, I'll pay full price. Dignity isn't about getting special treatment, it's about getting equal treatment. Take that money instead and start a program helping other small farmers. Modernize their operations. Help the ones who haven't managed to save quite enough yet." The room fell silent as the profound wisdom of his words sank in. Richard nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. "The Thompson Small Farm Initiative," he said, writing the name on his notepad. "A fund to help farmers like you, administered without prejudice or judgment." As if on cue, a wealthy farmer who had witnessed everything stepped forward from the crowd. "I'm matching the dealership's offer, not for Mr. Thompson, but for the initiative he's inspired. Every farmer deserves the respect he's shown today." News of what happened spread through the agricultural community like wildfire. Phones had recorded everything after the slap, capturing Marcus's dignity and wisdom. The story touched hearts far beyond capital city, sparking discussions about prejudice and worth in places long overdue for such conversations. The security cameras that captured Blake's moment of shame also recorded this transformation, a moment that would soon go viral, bringing viewers to tears and inspiring change. Far beyond Pine Valley's borders, what had begun as an act of prejudice had blossomed into a movement of understanding and respect that would transform an industry. The transformation at Capital City Equipment continued into the afternoon with increasing momentum. Richard Wells had called an emergency staff meeting in the main conference room, where the full impact of the day's events would reshape the company's future. The massive conference room, usually reserved for quarterly reviews and VIP clients, now held every employee who could attend. Sales staff, maintenance workers, and administrative personnel sat shoulder to shoulder. A large screen dominated one wall, displaying live video feeds of corporate executives and regional managers who had dropped everything to join this unprecedented gathering. Marcus Thompson sat at Richard's right hand, his quiet dignity a stark contrast to the corporate intensity around him. His father's portfolio, still containing the carefully counted savings, rested on the polished conference table before him. "What happened today?" Richard began, standing at the head of the table. "It wasn't just an incident to be handled by HR. It's a wake-up call that demands immediate and permanent change." He placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Mr. Thompson didn't just come here to buy a tractor. He came here carrying the dreams of his family and the support of his community, and we nearly threw that away because of our prejudices." The corporate CEO's voice came through the speakers, firm and decisive. "Richard, you have full authority to implement whatever changes you deem necessary. The company will provide whatever resources you need." For the next hour, Richard outlined a comprehensive transformation plan. New training programs would be mandatory for all staff, focusing on rural culture, agricultural heritage, and the elimination of class-based prejudice. The dress code policy would be revised to welcome farmers in their work clothes. Most significantly, the commission structure would be reformed to eliminate any incentive to discriminate based on appearance. But it was Marcus who provided the most powerful moment of the meeting. When asked to speak, he stood slowly, his weathered hands resting on the conference table. "Your changes sound good," he said, his voice carrying the wisdom of generations. "But real change isn't about policies. It's about seeing people, really seeing them." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, worn photograph. "This is my father, standing in front of our first family farm. He taught me that the soil doesn't care what clothes you wear or what car you drive. It responds to respect, dedication, and hard work. Your challenge isn't just changing rules, it's changing hearts." The silence that followed was profound. A senior executive unmuted himself on the video call, his voice thick with emotion. "Mr. Thompson, would you consider being part of our training program? Your story, your wisdom, it's exactly what we need." Marcus shook his head gently. "I'm a farmer, not a teacher, but I'll tell you what I will do. Bring your trainees to my farm. Let them see what real agricultural work looks like. Let them understand the lives of the people they serve." Richard's eyes lit up. Field training, real-world experience, not just for new hires, for everyone, including management. He turned to the screen. "We could implement this across all dealerships. Create a true connection between our staff and the farming community. The corporate team began rapid-fire planning, but Marcus raised his hand for attention. "There's something else you need to consider. I'm not the first person to walk through your doors carrying dreams. I'm just the first one who had the means to prove you wrong. How many others have you turned away?" His words hit hard. Sales staff looked at their shoes, remembering similar incidents. The corporate executives fell silent, perhaps calculating the business lost to prejudice over the years. "The Thompson Small Farm Initiative is a start," Richard said, referring to the newly established fund. "But we need to do more. We need to actively reach out to the farming community, rebuild trust, show them that things have changed." A regional manager on the video call spoke up. "We could host open houses specifically for small farmers, provide information about financing options, maintenance training, community resources. And," added another executive, "we could partner with agricultural colleges, offer workshops on modern farming techniques, show that we're not just selling equipment, we're investing in the future of farming." Marcus listened to the plans, unfolding, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he spoke again, his words carrying the weight of experience. "All of these ideas sound good, but remember, trust is like topsoil. It takes years to build, moments to destroy, and a lot of hard work to restore." Richard nodded, understanding the deeper meaning. "Which is why we need to make this more than just a corporate initiative. This needs to become part of our DNA." The meeting continued for another hour, with practical plans taking shape. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative would be expanded nationwide. A new customer service charter would be developed, emphasizing respect and dignity for all clients. Training programs would be redesigned from the ground up, with input from farmers like Marcus. But perhaps the most significant moment came near the end, when Richard made an unexpected announcement. "There's one more thing," he said, looking at Marcus. "I'd like to offer you a position on our advisory board. We need your perspective, your wisdom, to ensure we never lose sight of what matters." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I'll consider it," he finally said. "But remember, my first commitment is to my land and my family. If I do this, it'll be on my terms during my off-season." The corporate team readily agreed, recognizing the value of having someone with Marcus's integrity, helping guide their transformation. What had begun as a day of shame was ending with a promise of real, lasting change. As the meeting concluded, Richard walked Marcus back to the showroom where his tractor waited. The same employees who had witnessed his humiliation earlier now stood with new respect, understanding that they had been present for something truly transformative. What they didn't know was that the story was far from over. The changes beginning at Capital City Equipment would ripple through the agricultural industry, touching lives and transforming attitudes far beyond anything they could imagine. As Marcus prepared to finalize the purchase of his tractor, the weight of the day's events settled around the dealership like evening dew on his fields. The showroom, once a place of humiliation, had transformed into something entirely different. Employees who had earlier averted their eyes now approached him with genuine respect, eager to learn from his wisdom. The paperwork was being processed in Richard Wells' office when an unexpected visitor arrived. Blake, the former salesman who had slapped Marcus, stood in the doorway, his arrogant demeanor replaced by genuine remorse. Security tensed, but Marcus raised his hand in a gesture of peace. "Mr. Thompson," Blake began, his voice trembling, I know I have no right to be here, but I couldn't leave without trying to make this right." His designer suit looked rumpled now, his carefully styled hair disheveled from running his hands through it in distress. Marcus studied the young man carefully. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "the hardest seeds to plant are the ones that grow in our hearts." He gestured for Blake to enter the office. "Tell me why you did what you did." For the next hour, Blake shared his story. He came from wealth, had never known struggle, and had been taught to judge worth by appearance. As he spoke, tears began flowing freely. "I never saw people," he admitted. "I just saw walking commission checks or wastes of time. Today, you made me see myself, and I'm ashamed of what I saw." Marcus listened patiently, reminded of teaching his children about crop rotation, how sometimes the soil needs to be turned over completely before new things can grow. "Shame can be like fertilizer," he said finally. "It can help new understanding grow, or it can burn everything it touches. The choice is yours." Richard Wells, who had been silent during this exchange, spoke up. "Blake, you're terminated from this dealership, and that won't change. But Mr. Thompson's wisdom gives me an idea." He turned to Marcus. "With your permission, could Blake spend a month working on your farm? Not as punishment, but as education?" The proposal hung in the air. Marcus considered it carefully, remembering his own father's teachings about redemption and growth. "A month of hard work can teach lessons no classroom can," he finally agreed. "But there are conditions." Blake nodded eagerly, ready to accept any terms. Marcus laid out his requirements. Blake would work the same hours as the Thompson family, live in their modest guest room, eat at their table, and learn every aspect of small-scale organic farming. Most importantly, he would experience firsthand the dignity of honest labor. As word of this arrangement spread through the dealership, other employees began approaching Marcus with similar requests. They wanted to understand the lives of the farmers they served, to bridge the gap between their corporate world and the agricultural community they'd long misunderstood. Richard Wells seized this opportunity for broader change. "We're going to formalize this," he announced. "Every employee, from sales to management, will spend at least 1 week per year working alongside our farming customers. We'll call it the Fields of Understanding program." Marcus's wisdom had catalyzed something powerful. The dealership's transformation was becoming more than policy changes. It was becoming a movement of heart-level understanding. Employees began sharing their own stories of prejudice faced or shown, creating a ripple effect of awareness and change. By late afternoon, news crews had gathered outside the dealership. The story of the slap and its aftermath had gone viral on social media, touching hearts across the agricultural community. But Marcus wasn't interested in publicity. Instead, he focused on ensuring his experience would create lasting change. Working with Richard, he helped establish guidelines for the Thompson Small Farm Initiative. The program would prioritize farmers who showed the same dedication and community support that had characterized his own journey. "We're not just financing tractors," he explained. "We're investing in character." As the day drew to a close, Marcus prepared to drive his new tractor home. The same customers who had witnessed his humiliation now gathered to shake his hand, many with tears in their eyes. They had witnessed not just the power of dignity in the face of prejudice, but the transformative potential of wisdom and forgiveness. Blake, who would begin his month of farm work the following Monday, helped Marcus complete the final paperwork. His hands shook as he processed the documents, but his eyes showed a new understanding. "Mr. Thompson," he said softly, "thank you for showing me what real worth looks like." The security footage of the slap had indeed gone viral, but it was the aftermath, Marcus's dignity, his wisdom, and the dealership's transformation that brought viewers to tears. Comments poured in from around the country, sharing similar experiences and celebrating the change one farmer's integrity had sparked. As Marcus climbed onto his new tractor, Richard Wells addressed the gathered crowd one final time. "Today, we witnessed something remarkable. Mr. Thompson came here to buy a tractor, but he gave us something far more valuable. He taught us that true worth isn't measured by appearances or account balances, but by the content of one's character." The sun was setting as Marcus drove his tractor out of the dealership, but something new was dawning in capital city equipment. The seeds of change he had planted would grow into a harvest more valuable than any crop, a harvest of understanding, respect, and genuine human connection. What began as a moment of shame had transformed into a movement of change, touching hearts and transforming lives far beyond the walls of one equipment dealership. And as Marcus guided his new tractor toward home, he carried with him not just the machine he'd saved for, but the knowledge that sometimes the most important cultivation happens in the fields of human hearts. The sun was setting as Marcus Thompson guided his new tractor along the familiar roads leading back to Pine Valley. The machine's engine hummed with promise, but his mind was on the day's extraordinary events. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing with messages from people who had seen the viral video of the incident and its remarkable resolution. As he crested the final hill overlooking his farm, an unexpected sight made him pause. Dozens of vehicles lined his driveway and the nearby road. The entire community had gathered to welcome him home. Strings of lights had been hung between fence posts, and a hand-painted banner read, "Welcome home, Marcus, our hero." Sarah rushed to meet him as he parked. The tractor, tears streaming down her face. Michael, Emma, and David weren't far behind, but they weren't alone. Farmers from across the county stood waiting, many holding their phones that had shown them the video of his dignity in the face of prejudice. Word spread fast, Sarah explained, embracing him. Everyone wanted to be here when you returned. She touched his cheek gently, where the slap had landed hours earlier. Are you okay? Marcus nodded, surveying the crowd of supporters. Old Mr. Jenkins stepped forward, leaning on his cane. You did more than buy a tractor today, son. You stood up for all of us who've ever been judged by our appearance rather than our character. The story of what happened at Capital City Equipment had rippled through social media and farming communities across the state. Local news crews had already arrived, eager to capture the homecoming, but Marcus's focus was on his family and neighbors. Inside their modest farmhouse, while the community celebrated outside, Marcus shared the full story with his family. He told them about Blake's transformation, the Thompson Small Farm Initiative, and the changes coming to the dealership. The children listened intently, understanding they had witnessed something profound. Dad, Michael said thoughtfully, when we started saving for the tractor, I thought it was just about making our farm work better, but it became something much bigger, didn't it? Marcus smiled, remembering his own father's wisdom. Sometimes, son, the most important harvest isn't the one we plant in the soil, it's the one we plant in people's hearts. The impact of that day spread far beyond Pine Valley. The video of Marcus's response to being slapped, followed by his dignified handling of the situation, went viral across farming communities nationwide. His words about judging character rather than appearance resonated with millions. Capital City Equipment's transformation became a case study in corporate responsibility. Other dealerships began implementing similar changes, reaching out to Marcus for guidance. The Fields of Understanding program spread across the industry, with salespeople and executives spending time working alongside farmers to better understand their lives and needs. Blake's month, working on the Thompson farm, became a powerful story of its own. The formerly arrogant salesman transformed through hard work and daily exposure to the dignity of farming life. His social media posts about his experience inspired others to examine their own prejudices. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative grew beyond its original scope. Other companies and wealthy individuals contributed, creating a substantial fund to help small farmers modernize their operations while maintaining their dignity and independence. Marcus insisted that character and community contribution be key factors in selecting recipients. Local schools began inviting Marcus to speak about dignity, prejudice, and the value of hard work. His simple wisdom resonated with students and teachers alike. Success isn't about proving others wrong, he would tell them. It's about staying true to who you are and what you believe. Sarah noticed subtle changes in their children. Michael approached his farm work with new purpose, understanding its deeper significance. Emma started a school club focused on bridging cultural divides. Even David began writing stories about farming life, helping urban readers understand rural values. The impact on Pine Valley itself was profound. The community's unity in supporting the Thompsons had strengthened bonds between neighbors. Other small farmers, inspired by Marcus's example, began modernizing their operations while maintaining their traditional values. As weeks passed, the new tractor proved its worth in the fields, but its greatest value wasn't in increased productivity. It stood as a symbol of dignity, perseverance, and the power of maintaining one's principles in the face of prejudice. Visitors to the Thompson farm often asked to see it, touching its hood like a talisman of hope. One evening, as Marcus watched the sunset from his porch, Sarah joined him with a newspaper. The headline read, "Local Farmers' Dignity Transforms Agricultural Industry." But Marcus was more interested in watching his children work in the fields, understanding that the true transformation wasn't in headlines or viral videos. It was in the hearts and minds of people learning to see beyond appearances. The Thompson family's story had become more than just a tale of overcoming prejudice. It had become a testament to the power of dignity, wisdom, and the enduring strength of rural values in a changing world. Their experience reminded everyone that sometimes the most powerful response to prejudice isn't anger or revenge, but the quiet dignity that changes hearts and opens minds. The footage of Marcus Thompson's experience at Capital City Equipment rapidly spread across social media platforms, igniting a nationwide conversation about dignity and prejudice. The original security camera video showing the slap and its aftermath garnered millions of views within days. But it was the cell phone footage captured by witnesses that truly moved people to tears. Marcus's quiet strength, his wisdom in handling prejudice, and the transformation he inspired at the dealership. Comments flooded every platform where the video appeared. This farmer showed us what real dignity looks like. As a business owner, I'm completely changing my employee training after watching this. My father faced the same prejudice for years. This story heals old wounds. National news networks descended on Pine Valley, eager to explore the story's deeper implications. They found a community transformed. The Thompson farm became a symbol of resilience and dignity, with visitors coming from neighboring states to see where the viral story began. A CNN documentary crew spent a week following Marcus as he worked his land with the new tractor. They captured intimate family moments, community gatherings, and the ripple effects of his actions. The resulting hour-long special, Dignity's Harvest, became the network's most watched documentary that year. The story particularly resonated within the agricultural community. Farmers across the country began sharing their own experiences of prejudice faced at equipment dealerships, banks, and corporate offices. These testimonials sparked a broader discussion about class discrimination in rural America. Blake's transformation became its own viral phenomenon. His daily social media updates about life on the Thompson farm attracted a massive following. Pictures of his blistered hands, videos of pre-dawn chores, and heartfelt reflections on learning humility resonated with viewers who saw their own prejudices reflected in his journey. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative's success stories provided continuing content that kept the conversation alive. Each farmer who received help had their own compelling narrative of determination and dignity. These stories, professionally produced and shared across platforms, maintained the momentum of change Marcus had initiated, educational institutions took notice. Universities began using the incident as a case study in business ethics courses. High schools incorporated the story into their social studies curriculum, using it to discuss prejudice, dignity, and appropriate responses to injustice. Marcus occasionally participated in virtual classroom discussions, sharing his wisdom with students nationwide. The video's comment sections evolved into forums for meaningful dialogue about systemic prejudice and potential solutions. Business owners admitted to their own biases and committed to change. Urban viewers gained new perspectives on rural life and values. Young people discussed how the incident shaped their understanding of dignity and respect. Capital City Equipment's transformation inspired a series of corporate training videos. Richard Wells became a sought-after speaker on organizational culture change, though he always emphasized that the real credit belonged to Marcus. Other dealerships nationwide began implementing similar sensitivity training programs. Major television networks approached the Thompsons with reality show offers and exclusive interview requests, but Marcus declined most of them. "Our story isn't about fame or entertainment," he explained. "It's about learning to see the worth in every person who walks through your door." The impact stretched beyond American borders. International news outlets picked up the story, leading to discussions about class prejudice and dignity in various cultural contexts. Marcus received messages from farmers in Europe, Asia, and South America, all sharing similar experiences and expressing gratitude for his example. Social media groups formed around themes of dignity in the face of prejudice. The hashtag Dignity Like Thompson trended repeatedly as people shared their own stories of maintaining composure and wisdom when faced with discrimination. Business consultants began using the Thompson method to describe customer service approaches that prioritized respect over appearances. The Thompson family's story became a reference point for discussions about rural values, modernization, and maintaining dignity in a changing world. Their experience demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful response to prejudice isn't confrontation, but the quiet strength that changes hearts and opens minds. Each new sharing of the video sparked fresh conversations about respect, prejudice, and human worth. The story continued to resonate because it touched on universal experiences while offering hope for positive change. Marcus's wisdom, that true worth isn't in how others see you, but in how you see yourself and treat others, became a guiding principle for many who encountered his story. The transformation sparked by Marcus Thompson's experience reached far beyond the viral video and media attention. In Pine Valley, tangible changes took root that would impact generations to come. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative's local chapter became a model for rural community development. Weekly meetings at the town hall drew farmers from across the county, discussing everything from modern farming techniques to dealing with prejudice in the business world. Marcus's quiet leadership style set the tone, focused on solutions rather than grievances. Sarah Thompson started a mentoring program pairing experienced farmers with newcomers to agriculture. Her initiative particularly focused on helping women and minorities entering farming, addressing layers of prejudice beyond what Marcus had faced. The program quickly expanded to neighboring counties. Local banks, inspired by the changes at Capital City Equipment, revised their lending practices for small farmers. The Pine Valley Savings and Loan created a special agricultural loan program, with character and community involvement becoming key factors in the approval process alongside traditional credit metrics. The Thompson Children's School implemented a comprehensive agricultural education program. Michael, Emma, and David helped develop curriculum components based on their family's experience. Students learned not just about farming techniques, but about rural values, dignity in labor, and judging character over appearance. Blake's presence on the Thompson farm continued to yield unexpected benefits. His transformation attracted other corporate professionals seeking similar experiences. The Thompsons established a formal internship program, hosting business people who wanted to understand agricultural life firsthand. The local farmers' market evolved into a community hub. The Thompson stand became a gathering point where people shared stories, sought advice, and built connections. Urban visitors, drawn by the viral story, discovered a vibrant rural culture that challenged their preconceptions. Pine Valley's annual Harvest Festival took on new significance. The event now included panels on rural-urban understanding, demonstrations of traditional and modern farming techniques, and opportunities for dialogue between different communities. Attendance tripled, with visitors coming from across the state. Marcus's approach to modernization, while maintaining traditional values, influenced other local farmers. The sight of his new tractor working alongside time-honored organic methods showed that progress and principle could coexist. Several families followed his example, modernizing their operations while preserving their farming philosophy. The Thompson farm itself became a living classroom. Agricultural students from state universities conducted research there, studying how traditional organic methods could be enhanced by modern equipment. Their findings helped other small farmers make informed decisions about modernization. Community support networks strengthened. When the Anderson family faced foreclosure, the lessons of unity learned during the Thompsons' saving period inspired a community-wide effort to help them keep their farm. Similar initiatives spread to surrounding communities. Local businesses adopted the Thompson standard, a commitment to treating all customers with equal dignity regardless of appearance. The phrase became shorthand for ethical business practices throughout the region. The impact on young people proved particularly significant. Applications to agricultural programs from Pine Valley students increased dramatically. Many cited the Thompson story as their inspiration, seeing farming as a noble profession that demanded both physical skill and moral strength. By the first anniversary of the incident at Capital City Equipment, Pine Valley had become a case study in rural community renewal. The changes went beyond economic metrics, touching on fundamental issues of dignity, respect, and human connection. This grassroots transformation demonstrated that true change begins at home, in the daily interactions and choices of ordinary people committed to treating each other with dignity. 1 year after the incident at Capital City Equipment, Marcus Thompson sat at his kitchen table with a thick folder of letters, emails, and news clippings. Each piece of correspondence represented a life touched by his story of dignity in the face of prejudice. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a local program at Capital City Equipment had expanded to over 200 dealerships nationwide. The initiative had helped more than 1,000 small farmers modernize their operations while maintaining their dignity and independence. Blake's transformation became a cornerstone of corporate training programs. His month on the Thompson farm had evolved into a formal executive education program, with major companies sending their management teams for week-long immersions in agricultural life. The waiting list stretched months ahead. Capital City Equipment's Fields of Understanding program had been adopted by dealerships across the country. Sales staff and executives regularly spent time working alongside farmers, leading to a fundamental shift in how the agricultural equipment industry approached customer relations. Marcus's speaking engagements, though carefully selected, had profound impacts. His message about dignity and character resonated in boardrooms, universities, and rural communities alike. He declined most commercial opportunities, focusing instead On venues where his story could inspire meaningful change, the Thompson children had grown in unexpected ways. Michael started a youth farming program, teaching urban children about agriculture and rural values. Emma's organic beauty products line, born from their saving period, had become a successful small business celebrating farm-to-face sustainability. David's writings about farm life were being published in national magazines. Sarah's role had evolved too. She became a respected voice in agricultural finance reform, consulting with banks and credit unions about creating more equitable lending practices for small farmers. Her practical experience helping manage the Thompson Small Farm Initiative gave her insights that traditional financial advisors lacked. The academic world took notice. Several universities conducted studies on what they called the Thompson effect, examining how one act of dignity in the face of prejudice could catalyze widespread social change. The findings influenced corporate training programs and business school curricula nationwide. Richard Wells, still at Capital City Equipment, had overseen a complete transformation of the company culture. Employee satisfaction scores reached record highs, and the dealership became known as a model of ethical business practices. The changes he implemented were studied and replicated by businesses across various industries. The viral video continued to circulate, finding new audiences and sparking fresh conversations. Each sharing brought new stories of people inspired to handle prejudice with dignity rather than anger. The comment sections became archives of human experience and wisdom. Pine Valley itself had transformed. The small farming community became a destination for those studying sustainable agriculture and rural development. Visitors found not just modern farming techniques, but a living example of how traditional values could thrive alongside progress. East Thompson Farm grew thoughtfully. While the new tractor had increased productivity, Marcus maintained his commitment to organic methods and personal attention to the land. The farm became a demonstration site for how modern equipment could enhance rather than replace traditional farming wisdom. International interest surged. Farming delegations from various countries visited to study the balance Marcus had struck between modernization and tradition. His approach to maintaining dignity while embracing necessary change resonated across cultural boundaries. The most significant changes were often the quietest. Throughout the agricultural industry, attitudes shifted. Dealerships reported fewer incidents of prejudice, and more small farmers felt comfortable seeking equipment upgrades. The barrier between rural and urban perspectives began to soften. Marcus continued farming, his daily work a testament to the principles he demonstrated that day at the dealership. His quiet dignity and wisdom continued to influence lives, proving that sometimes the most powerful changes start with a single person refusing to let prejudice diminish their worth. 5 years after the incident at Capital City Equipment, the Thompson legacy had become firmly established in American agricultural history. The small farm that once symbolized a family's determination had grown into a beacon of hope and change for rural communities nationwide. The Thompson Small Farm Initiative had assisted over 5,000 farmers with a remarkable 98% success rate in maintaining their operations. The program's focus on character and community involvement, rather than just financial metrics, had revolutionized agricultural lending practices. Marcus's original wisdom continued to resonate. The soil doesn't care what clothes you wear or what car you drive. It responds to respect, dedication, and hard work. These words appeared in business textbooks, corporate training manuals, and even on the walls of equipment dealerships across the country. Blake had opened his own agricultural consulting firm, helping bridge the gap between corporate America and farming communities. His personal transformation story remained a powerful testament to the possibility of change. The month he spent on the Thompson farm had evolved into a structured program that had transformed hundreds of executives' perspectives on rural life. The Thompson children had grown into leaders in their own right. Michael managed the expanded family farm, maintaining the perfect balance between tradition and innovation. Emma's organic products line had become a national brand, with all ingredients sourced from small family farms. David's writings about rural life and dignity had earned literary recognition. Sarah's influence on agricultural finance had led to systemic changes in how banks evaluated farm loans. The Thompson criteria, as they became known, considered character, community impact, and sustainable practices alongside traditional financial metrics. Capital City Equipment had become the nation's leading agricultural equipment dealer, known for its ethical practices and commitment to serving all farmers with dignity. Richard Wells regularly spoke about how one farmer's response to prejudice had transformed an entire industry. The viral video of the incident, now viewed by millions, was used in schools, universities, and corporate training programs worldwide. But more importantly, it had sparked countless quiet acts of dignity in the face of prejudice, many never recorded or publicized. Marcus himself remained unchanged by the attention, continuing to work his land with the same dedication that had characterized his entire life. The tractor that had sparked this journey still operated daily, its presence a reminder that true worth lies not in possessions, but in character. As our story draws to a close, we are reminded that sometimes the most profound changes begin with a simple choice to maintain dignity in the face of prejudice. The Thompson legacy isn't just about a farmer who bought a tractor. It's about how wisdom, integrity, and quiet strength can transform communities and change hearts. To our viewers, share your own stories of dignity in the face of prejudice. How has the Thompson story inspired you? Join the conversation below, and remember to subscribe for more stories that remind us of our common humanity. Your comments help us build a community of understanding and respect. Like, share, and hit that notification bell to stay connected with more inspiring stories that touch hearts and change lives. Until next time, remember Marcus Thompson's wisdom. True worth isn't in how others see you, but in how you see yourself and treat others.